your meeting to order first?
That'll be great. I am calling the meeting of the Wellfleet Town Finance Committee in order at 7:02 p.m. on September 15th.
Okay, very good. And I'll call to order the Wellfleet Selectboard. This is a joint meeting of the Wellfleet Selectboard and the Wellfleet Finance Committee, Monday, September 15th. The time is now 7:02 p.m. I see that both groups have a quorum, and as posted, we will now begin the meeting with announcements and public comments. Does anyone on either board have an announcement they'd like to make?
Looks like Stephen is he's got his hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Thank you.
I see
Jeff,
Dale.
I just wanted to say you look good in a tie.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, are there any public comments? Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and neither board will debate, discuss, or vote on anything raised solely during public comment.
I think you're good.
I think we're good to go. I'm going to wait about 60 seconds just in case somebody is trying to get on and is having difficulty. I'd rather err on the side of a 1-minute delay. And that will give Sheila a chance to join us if she's going to.
John, Sheila is in, she just raised her hand. She's an attendee. I imagine she's looking to become a participant.
Oh, okay. Well,
I sent her an email. I'll send her a
She's
text.
good. She should be able to come in as a panelist now.
All right.
Oh, there she is.
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Thank you all. I was looking for the passcode. Okay. All set.
Okay. All right, then, seeing none, we'll move on to the first order of business, which is to review, discuss, and possibly vote to insert and recommend the Finance Committee's charter changes for the fall town meeting warrant. And who would like to initiate the discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I will, if you don't mind.
Okay, Fran?
And before we get into the details, we put together a sort of a very high level summary of sort of what we were trying to accomplish and what we are proposing. It's in page 11 of the, it starts on page 11 of the select board packet. And I'll just, I guess everybody can follow along. Rebecca, it's pretty short, so I'm not going to ask you to put it up on the screen.
Is this
unless people would think that would be helpful.
Is this the printout that starts with the town seal and proposed charter amendments?
Yes, and Rebecca put a very helpful post-it note on there saying Finance Committee slideshow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have it.
Okay,
Okay,
that's not on, that isn't on mine, but
oh, did you get a hard copy?
yes.
We got a hard copy though. Doesn't say it.
Okay, yeah, that's probably why, John. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that so where are we starting? Because my pages aren't numbered here.
Okay, we're starting on that page that has the seal and it titled Proposed Charter Amendments.
Oh, okay.
Finance Committee.
Okay, ready.
And if you just jump in, I included a New Yorker comic, which I think really describes perfectly the situation we find ourselves in.
Then a miracle.
Yeah, we are. The budget process is the miracle that's happening in step 2 here. And if you go to the next page, the problem is that the charter does not address how you get from the TA's budget to the budget that's presented at town meeting. Previously in the package, Rebecca was kind enough to include the current charter language, but just in summary, section 7.2 is labeled submission of budget and budget message. That talks about the select board instructing the TA and then the TA coming back with a draft budget. Section 7-3, which is the action on the proposed budget, that is currently blank. And the charter says was repealed April 30, 2013. And that was the annual town election. That's the date of the annual town election. And if you remember, a charter change requires 2 subsequent votes of the town before it becomes enacted. And then finishing up section 7.4 is a budget adoption, which talks about town meeting adopting the budget. So the main issue we are trying to fill is fleshing out section 7-3, action on proposed budget. The secondary issue that we're trying to address is that the required timing of actions in the charter for the various steps in the process are not consistent with our recent history. And, we felt it was important that the charter, that we should be following the charter. And if we have a different process, we should memorialize that in the charter. And as sort of the next question is, okay, how did we get here? And we spent a lot of time trying to figure this out. And the best we can come up with, and we spoke to, pretty much, all of the old timers, quote unquote, that we could think of to try to understand what happened. But at the 2010 annual town meeting, there were changes proposed to the charter in this section. And it required a 2/3 vote. The minutes of the meeting state, in response to a motion, a motion to not include the changes to section 731, 732, and 733 passes by a vote of 70 in favor and 69 against. So based on the language in the minutes, you would think that the existing language in section 7.3 would continue, 7-3 would continue. But that's not how it was interpreted. As you saw, if you look in the charter, the section 7.7-3 is interpreted as having been repealed. And there have been subsequent changes to the charter, but they didn't correct this omission. And so what we have is no guidance in our charter as to what happens to the TA's budget. Section 7.1 or section 7.2 requires the TA to prepare a budget and present it, but there's no discussion on what happens after that. And the default under the state law is, which is found in section 16 of chapter 39, is that the default is the finance committee presents the budget. Now that can be modified, and the selectmen can be authorized by a bylaw or presumably a charter, but absent any specific instructions that the select board has that responsibility, the statute gives that responsibility to the finance committee. And I know I can speak personally that was not I didn't think as chair of the finance committee, I didn't think I owned the budget. And I don't think my predecessors believed that either over the past, well, going on 15 years now that this has been the case. So that's sort of the background. Let's talk once again, before we get into specific language, which I'm sure you'll have questions about, but let's talk about sort of high level what we've come up with. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Rebecca. Okay, the first thing is the change of the process. We wanted to clarify the roles of each party. The town administrator prepares the proposed budget following general guidance provided by the select board. That's current. That's the current provisions. The select board would then review the proposed budget, amend it as required or desired, and submit it to town meeting. The finance committee's responsibility would be to review the proposed budget and recommend action on it at town meeting. And then obviously town meeting approves the operating and capital budgets. That is also, once again, that is in section 7.4, so that there's no change there. And we're saying operating capital. This also would talk about the those for the enterprise funds as well. But we're sort of grouping that all together as one process. And Rebecca, if you just go to the next slide. And then the other sort of changes have to deal with the timing. Right now the old section 7.3 and actually the current budget, because the capital budget is down further in section 7. That is really a separate and apart process from the operating budget. That's not the way it has worked, at least the past several years. And the committee felt that it was important to consider them both together. So we've changed the timing, the suggested timing, to have a concurrent process for both the operating and the capital budgets. And then the actual timing, the hard dates are October 31st. The select board issues its policy statement to the TA, basically giving him guidelines, or giving him or her guidelines as to what the overall what the budget should look like coming out the other end. By January 15th, the TA proposes the operating and capital budgets and issues a budget message, which effectively summarizes the draft budget. And then a budget, then both the select board and the finance committee begins considering the budget. We require one joint public hearing. We are proposing one joint public hearing on the draft operating and capital budgets. But presumably we would, once again, if both groups were willing, we would envision both groups meeting to discuss the departmental budgets with town staff. And then the other deadline that we put in was 30 days prior to the town meeting, that the finance committee would finalize its recommendations for all warrant articles and the capital improvement plan. That obviously may or may not be doable depending on where the budget is. This year, the schools were much better in terms of that, so we would have been able to hit these guidelines this year, but that obviously remains subject to what happens in the future. The other just sort of general basket of changes we're proposing is to clarify the role of the finance committee. And most of these are consistent with things the finance committee has done in the past. And this is phrased, it may do this. It's not a requirement. but the things that we felt would be appropriate for the finance committee to take up if it was if it had an interest would be, you know, to issue recommendations concerning the town's financial position and policies, assign liaisons with the town departments to assist them in the budget preparation process, assess longer-term capital plans, and this is this last one is it wasn't formally done, but the last several years we haven't had really good handle on our interim performance, but the committee felt that it would be important for the committee to review interim financial performance with town staff. And, you know, that's mainly for two reasons. One is to sort of inform them as to what potential issues for the upcoming budget may be for the subsequent year. And then also give them a sort of a heads up on any potential proposed transfers they may be asked to approve, you know, following the conclusion of the fiscal year. Rebecca, if you'd go the next slide, please. And so sort of the conclusion is we think we don't believe any of the changes are not founded, and we think they reflect the recent process improvements post financial crisis, and that was largely, you know, starting with Rich Waldo, Rich Bienvenu, and now Tom with Sue in the town accountant seat. You know, we want to continue to follow up on those improvements. And we also think the potential or the proposed changes positions the finance committee, you know, to be an effective resource for the town administrator, the select board, and, you know, most importantly, town meeting. I have included just, you know, an appendix A and appendix B. This was what section 7.3 looked like prior to the 2010 ATM, and I was really surprised when we found this. The old process was that after the TA issues its budget, the select board, or the board of selectmen of that, you know, in the terminology back then, had 30 days to adopt a budget and send it to the finance committee. And then it looks like the finance committee was expected to do the heavy lifting, conducting public meetings, issuing recommendations to town meetings, and very, very surprising, because I think this is this language probably predates the town administrator role as it's currently seen, is that the committee had the right to require any town division, department, board, or office to furnish it with appropriate financial reports and budgetary information. And then it was contemplated sort of the process where we hold joint public meetings to review budget requests with the department heads. If you go to the next page, these were the changes that were proposed, and these changes were the ones that were rejected by a vote at town meeting. It loosened the 30-day requirement for the select board to adopt the budget. It eliminated the requirement for the finance committee to hold public meetings. It was, and it also did away with the requirement to hold public meetings to review budget requests for the department heads. It became from obligatory to being optional. But surprisingly, when I look back at this, you know, the changes to 7.3.2 did not contemplate the ability of the committee to require financial reports and budgetary information from division, department, board, or office. That's not how, we didn't think that's the way it should work. We think that, the department heads do not report to the finance committee, like they don't report to the select board. We're not their bosses. That's the TA. So we thought that it was, that language was overly broad. But with that sort of by way of background, I'm happy to jump in and discuss specific language or answer any questions that anyone might have. And actually, before we do that, does any members of the finance committee want to add anything to my summary?
Outstanding job, Fran.
Agree.
Okay, well, Mr. Chair, I will turn it back over to you then.
All right, then I guess the time now is to open it up for discussion. Who would like to, maybe Tom?
I have some concerns. I think it's well put together, Fran, and I thank you for taking the time to try to bring all the anomalies that have been around here together, but I do have some concerns. One, I don't think the general budget and the capital budget have to go in at the same time. You're putting too much on the department heads. We do the budget, we look at the capital concurrently, but we don't finish the capital until we're done with the general. It kind of lets us know what we've got for money to spend on capital, and it makes us available to see where we're going to be. The second thing that I have concerns with is in the liaison meetings make a lot of sense. A lot of finance committees do this, and that's great. And meeting with the finance department as necessary makes a lot of sense. I think it worked really well last year, Fran, with your input when working with Sue. However, I don't like, and I understand the intent, but the wording of it has it open-ended, and it needs to be with notice, that type of thing. So we don't have an open door policy. We're always willing to sit down with any member of the finance committee. I think you know that. But there needs to be some, with 48 hours notice so that somebody's not just showing up at the DPW at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning saying we want to talk budgets. There has to be some sort of process so that people have some notice. The other thing that I think the timing of those things, the 30 days, the 20 days, doesn't matter. In Bourne, we got the budget. Select board had to turn it to the finance committee in 14 days. So 30 days is actually a good thing. But as I look at other finance committee charges, Dennis, Bourne, Nantucket, Eastham, none of those charges are as detailed as what is being proposed here. Not saying one's good or bad. I'm just saying that's out of the norm of what finance committee charges are throughout the Commonwealth and here on Cape Cod. So I'm not opposed. I don't think this is all necessary, but if this is what makes the town run better, the admin's not going to stand in the way. I just do think it's a little bit pulling the rubber band back too far the other way, perhaps from where it had been. And I do want to be sure that throughout all of the process, the select board is the primary driver of the budget.
Yeah, it's well, I can address your comments, Tom, or do you want to give everybody else a chance and I can just sort of.
Let's see if anybody else got anything to say. That's just my quick take as I did review of it.
Unless somebody else has something urgent they'd like to contribute, I would like to hear Mr. Conroy's response.
Yeah, and Tom, it's the the way that any charter is written really requires all parties that are covered by it to act in good faith and responsibly. And so if I went in and showed up at Jay's, office on Monday morning at 9 o'clock asking why there was a pothole on East Main Street or West Main Street that wasn't filled, he should kick me out. There's no question about it. He should have told me to take a hike. And so the language does presume that there will be adults in all the positions, on the finance committee, on the select board, and in the department head seats. That is, that's the only way that the town will run smoothly. And to your comment regarding, so I would be opposed to putting specific things like 48 hours notice and that kind of thing. I think that's a level that swings the pendulum too far the other direction. That's too prescriptive. But having a general statement, I think, is certainly appropriate. The other thing that I would comment is that, and I can't say we looked at Nantucket, said we looked at Bourne's charters, but we did look at a number of charters of surrounding towns, Provincetown, Eastham, Orleans. Jeff, can you remember some others that we looked at? Those three are the ones that pop into my head, but do you remember any others?
No.
We looked at 4 or 5. Is that sound
Yeah,
right?
mostly here, local on the Cape, more comparable to our town.
Yeah, and so it's so I don't necessarily agree with you. I think there is a little bit more detail, but the other examples you've given haven't gone through the financial issues that Wellfleet has gone through, and so
Maybe not to the degree.
Mhm.
fair enough. But we felt that and I think we were also responding as finance committee. People think the finance committee should be able to determine the salary of the deputy, the deputy harbor master, and set their schedules and their comp and their working conditions and all that. And we don't view that as our role, and we think that needs to be specified so people understand it more. And I said, with that, I see there's a bunch of hands up, so I'll stop. I'll shut up for a moment.
I'll try and do this in order if I get it right. Sheila, then Kathy, and then Josh. Am I
Okay.
right?
Thank you, John. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let's see. Now you can see me.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So I really appreciate this, and I think that it's not a bad thing to have periodic capital meetings on where we are, so that it's not all built up at the end. So I think that all of us sort of getting a review of where we are is not a bad thing. I'm sort of with Tom on saying to liaison, and and I agree, Fran, in a perfect world, we're all good adults, but we've had experience that we don't all act as adults. Particularly here in Wellfleet, we like to just kind of go on our own. I think that it's not a bad thing to have the ability to meet with a department, but it should say something like the liaison or committee can meet with a department head on a particular issue, capital wise, an agreed upon time and date or something like that, so that people just don't know that I have the ability to come in here, and whether you're in the middle of something or this isn't a time that you knew I was coming in, I still want this. I think that there's language that could be put in there just to, and it doesn't have to just say 48 hours, but to an agreed upon time and date between the two parties might help that. And, but I don't think it's bad. And it is amazing that that whole section was taken away, because it does seem like it's an important section of the charter to sort of spell out where the finance committee stands in their responsibilities. So I think, some of this is just really kind of language change, but I do get a little nervous when you have liaisons to departments, just from my own experience in other places, where that can really be abused by people and taking time of departments that may not be necessary or are used wisely. So I understand, I hear Tom's concern, and I kind of agree with him, but I also think it's a good idea to have periodic checkups on the budget and capital budget over the year for all of us, just so we all know where it is. And it does give a discipline to all departments and to us as well, to be up on top of what is happening with what we said we were going to do. Is the money there, and are we planning appropriately for the future? So I think this was a great amount of work, and I think I commend the finance. I tip my hat to you all, but I do think that some things have to be a little bit more, there has to be a little bit more defining language as to what we mean.
Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's interesting that we want to decrease the definition on some issues and increase the definition on the other issues. And Sheila, you stole my thunder, because I was just about to say there can be language in there, Fran, that just says agreed upon at a mutually convenient time for both. And that takes care of making sure that, people aren't just dropping in. I can honestly say that I was not part of the charter review for the finance committee, but I did see the deterioration of the charter versus what was actually happening over the last 5 years. When I was a chairperson and we were just running wild, things were getting handed in, and I agree with, I think Fran was accurate when he said this is, kind of we're kind of taking what we have been doing and then putting the language into it, because there were times when and for necessity or for not necessity, there were times that the finance committee was not included in anything. And, up until last year, where we had very little changes the hour before we were going to town meeting, it is improving, but the entire finance committee, and thank you, Fran and Jeff, and I think at one point Fred was on this. I don't know if you have anybody else on that who began reviewing the charter after we started seeing the disparity between what we were actually doing versus the charter. So it definitely does need to be cleaned up. And I disagree, Tom. I think there should be, and again, you're the professional, but I think there should be a little bit more structure based on what has happened in the past. And if that, I just remember going through it and wondering what was going to happen tomorrow. And I think there needs to be some structure put around what we are currently doing. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you, Fran and Jeff, for spending the time and putting this together. And again, Sheila, I think that thing for the adults in the room can be solved with a little bit of language of how we set up the liaison meetings. Because I will tell you, I was not a liaison when I was chair, and now I am liaison of the DPW. And Tom, and I hope you didn't use me as an example, because but I am going to go see Jay at the end of this week. I generally see him twice a year, and I'm super respectful of his time.
Jay has never complained.
Sheila, it does give us, just for the liaison background, if the select board doesn't know, from my perspective, not being a liaison, hearing the liaison reports, it gives the liaison a little bit more intimacy into the budgets So that as we go through the budget meeting, we can say, oh yeah, you know why I agree with that. And we can bring a little bit more color after working with the department heads on that. So I think it's super important to understand. It also gives us the chance to kind of say, maybe not, or can we move that to this year and tweak them? I mean, it's absolutely comes down to Tom being the arbiter of all of that based on the money. But it is a helpful conversation, I have found. So I'm going to stop now, and you're not going to hear from me from the rest of the night.
There you go.
Thank
Good. Josh?
If I could, John, if I could just add to that conversation before it's over.
Okay.
I think that we're in a good place with the finance committee. It has a good chair who actually understands and can help its committee along in understanding budgets, and to have that that ability to delve a little bit more into it. If they have questions, they can go back to Fran and Tom and have things clarified. So this is a good finance committee. I'm not saying anybody isn't an adult there, but things change, and we do need that language to be somewhat specific. So thank you, and I'll shut up as well. Thank you, John.
Josh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're all in agreement. I just kind of just sketched some draft language you might want to consider. You know, I mean, a charter is kind of like a contract, and contracts are written for rainy days. So we're all here in this room feeling like we can trust each other to do this, but in years in the future, we might not be so agreeable. We may want to put some guardrails. So would we consider a 7-2-7 something to the effect of all contact between the finance committee and town staff shall first be approved through the town administrator? The town administrator may allow recurring meetings at their discretion. If all parties find it productive, the TA may revoke or amend their consent at their discretion. And I propose it that way because I think it's important that the town administrator plays air traffic control to these conversations as kind of the switchboard between all the other departments, understanding where conversations are happening, where things are evolving. I think it's important that they're tied into these conversations. I have more comments, but Mr. Chair, if I can just reserve those till after we address this one specific issue. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff and Barbara, could I hear from Tom on that suggestion
No,
first?
let Barbara and Jeff go, and I'll wait.
Hey, Jeff?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, though.
Yeah?
Okay, first of all, I can't believe, I think this meeting's gone off the rails. You guys are worrying about the liaison role. We've been doing the liaison role for longer than any of the members on that select board, and it has worked extremely well. This isn't the issue. This wasn't why we rewrote this. What you have to understand is the historical context. And by the way, we've had great chairs of the finance committee for all of the years that I have served on this, and Fran is just continuing that tradition. What happened first, it's not just a contract you go to in an emergency. We use the charter language to literally guide how we approach our responsibilities. And what happened is, going back really to Charlie Sumner, the entire way in which we went through and worked through the budget process has gone through multiple iterations. It's finally starting to get stable. That's what we're seeing today under Tom's leadership. And by the way, Tom is at practically every meeting of the finance committee. He's well tuned in to what it is. We're not trying to own the budget. We're just trying to provide advice to the town. So I think this whole liaison business is a red herring. The real issue is we'd simply like to have the language inside of the charter simply reflect what it is that we do as a committee.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
But I'd like to let Barbara go first. Barbara?
Yes, thank you, John. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll be brief. I just wanted to add my voice to the earlier speakers who said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, you know, yes, it's good to have more eyeballs on the numbers, but because all of the department heads report to the town administrator really needs to be involved in that process. And I say this informed as much as a department head in another town and sort of knowing what these relationships are like as much as a selectman. So I guess, Jeff, I thought this conversation we're having now, I thought this was about more than just a liaison. I thought we were kind of talking generally about the amount of oversight, or that's the wrong word to use, involvement FinCom has. So, I think this is a productive discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Josh, and then Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I suppose we are spending quite a bit of time on this, but I think it's important. And just to, be clear, the select board's code of conduct prohibits the select board from going to any town department or any town staff directly. We are responsible by first going to the town administrator before we speak to any departments or staff. I don't think it's unreasonable to hold everyone else a part of this process to that same standard. I don't feel this has gone off the rails. I think this is a productive conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
All right, do you want to let, Tom has been waiting. Do you want to let him?
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, I don't think it's the issue. The issue isn't liaisons. The issue is notice. And while it hasn't been necessary in the past, since we're rewriting it, I think we ought to try to get it as clean as possible if this is going to go forward. The other comment I have, again, this is all good. It's fine. But I think a lot of what's in the proposal here, other than the dates in the charter and the prescriptives, how a lot of what is being proposed here can be done within an internal finance committee procedures and policies, and doesn't necessarily have to be a charter amendment. Some of the things do. I think you're right that 7.2 or 7.3 needs to be re-added. That it should. I don't know why it came out, but it came out. But I think a lot of what you're talking about here are things that are internal to the finance committee, and could very easily be policies of the finance committee as opposed to a charter amendment. Policies are easier to change as they need to be. Charter changes are more complicated to get changed. And I can see this being good for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, some of it forever. But I either way is fine. Preference would be it would be an internal policy.
Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
No, it's I think the reason that the finance committee was felt including section 7.2 defining their role was that the town really does not understand what is expected of the finance committee, and so that's what was driving it. And look, I do think we have to follow chain of command. I think we have to be respectful of everyone's time and everything. And so the language that member Yeston included or suggested, I think is great, but I think it's a little too prescriptive. I also drafted some language, and it's a little more general. But it was, and I'll read it. It's I once again, no pride of authorship, but I do think I don't think we want it to the point is we don't want to be too prescriptive. But my suggestion, and I put this in a 7.2-7, which is I think the same place that you suggested. It's just sort of a general statement. In carrying out its responsibilities, the finance committee shall coordinate with the town administrator any request for information, meetings, or other activity with any town employee. And that does not require 48 hours notice. That requires coordination. And there will be times when it's important to show up at somebody's office at 9 o'clock the next morning. Day after the fire at the harbor might have been a good example of that. you know, a day after the flooding on Bound Brook Road. That probably didn't have as much budget implications, but you know, there are times when you need more notice, other times you need less notice. But I think it's important that the town administrator be involved in that conversation and be the one that basically controls access to his staff. So I think my preference would be a general statement rather than a specific statement, but I once again, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the committee, but I don't believe that is inappropriate in the least.
Yeah, is it Steve that's on Dale's iPad?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Steve and then Dan.
So I agree with Tom on there are the Finance Committee does not have its own little bylaws set up. The liaison function can be satisfied with that as opposed to making a charter amendment. So Tom's got some very good points. There are some things here that are proposed that could be done in-house, so to speak, within the Finance Committee, as opposed to making a charter change. So that's one point I have. All of this is just the charter and bylaws or whatever you have, they're all just guidelines, basically. There's no enforcement in the charter, so if anybody violates anything, there's no like hell to pay. But I just wanted to point out that Tom's got some very good points about us as a finance committee maybe coming up with bylaws, because we don't have our own bylaws. And that was it.
Thank you. Dan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a lot to say, but given that I'm the appointing authority for the Finance Committee, I'm always interested to see that they're working well and carrying out the role that I think the charter and the town expects them, which is to be able to give good advice to town meeting voters. Our charter sets up the Finance Committee as a separate body appointed by a separate appointed authority, specifically to act as a check and balance on the executive branch of town government. I sometimes make the analogy that the Finance Committee is to town meeting, like the Congressional Budget Office is to the Congress. And the intent is that voters get another perspective on the budget to help them make up their minds. And it's a perspective that isn't coming from the administration and from the executive branch. So I think it's helpful to spell out specifically exactly what the role of the Finance Committee is. And I commend Fran and the committee for putting down in words what has been the practice and good practice when the Finance Committee is working the way it should. Most of what's in this document is simply memorializing what has been done, as long as I can remember when the Finance Committee is working well. Now, I was not moderator during that 2010 meeting, and I don't have a recollection of exactly how that went down. I don't remember that vote. I don't remember those series of changes, but it does look like through a process of omission, a clear definition of what the Finance Committee's role vis-a-vis town meeting, vis-a-vis the rest of the departments and the administration kind of got dropped. And I think it's important that that we, this effort or one like it be carried through to make it clear exactly what the Finance Committee's role is, what its responsibilities are in terms of reviewing the budget, liaison with town administration, and reporting to the town meeting and to the voters in a timely manner. And I think I think virtually all of that has been captured in this document. So I would like to see this included as a series of proposals to the voters. And I think the voters have the ability to look at this and make a judgment on it. The other thing I want to say is, and you know, with all due respect to, you know, the town staff and to Mr. Yeston and so forth, but you know, I agree with what Jeff Tash had to say. Is the liaison function has been going on for quite a number of years. And speaking now not as moderator, but as someone who is a department head of one of the major departments in town, having a liaison to my department was extremely valuable, because the liaison was able to bring back to the finance committee a perspective on how a department's operation went and why they might have the budget request that they have, as opposed to a budget request coming to the select board or to the town administration in a vacuum. The liaison was able to provide very useful information back to the finance committee, exactly how a department operates and why they might be making the budget requests that they need. So my recommendation is to, you know, maybe it's not necessary to codify it, but I think the liaison function is an extremely valuable one to the finance committee and to the departments themselves, who have, you know, if you will, sometimes an advocate on their behalf as a member of the finance committee. Thank you for giving me a chance to make my views known.
From me to Dan, just a question for you, Dan. And just to clarify that I understand what you're saying, are you suggesting that none of this should be implemented as simply as policy as opposed to charter changes? Or
I think maybe it needs a little tweaking. I mean, I don't particularly see any great problems with it. You know, again, I think a certain amount of trust, but no, I think it belongs in the charter. It was there to start with. I mean, there was a clearly defined role and a clearly defined set of procedures in the charter, which apparently inadvertently got omitted. I wasn't aware of that until Fran brought it to my attention. But I think it does belong in the charter. I mean, we can maybe quibble over to what level of detail, but my feeling is it does belong in the charter. Yes. Thank you.
Fran, did you have your hand up a minute ago?
No, you got me, John. Thank you.
Or Tom? Did you? Tom, did you have your hand up? Okay. Then Sheila and then Kathy.
Okay, so I just want to agree really kind of with Danny said and even Jeff. This, you know, if you are trying to get someone onto a committee, you know, somebody's interested, where do you go to look at what does the committee do? And that is the role of the finance committee. And, you know, it is kind of an established role in itself, and it's good to have it in the charter. The talk about the liaison, that can be tweaked. It can be put in by law. However, to mention that there are liaisons or something, that can be decided. Fran put very good language out there. Josh did it, but I think Fran's language was very clear. And unfortunately, we do need to be clear, because there are some people that get very overzealous over things. And, you know, it's just the nature of the beast. So I think it's a good thing to have the role of the finance committee in the charter, and whatever we think could be something that we don't want to make so, you know, we're chiseling it into something that can be changed a little bit easier as we go down the road. That can be worked out between Tom and Fran and the committee. I mean, that it's just really a little bit of juggling there, but on the whole, I think it's good to have the role spelled out. Just even when you're thinking about what, if I wanted to be on that committee, what is it that we do? And we need to know those things. Thank you.
And then Josh.
Me, John. Thank you, John Lozette. So thank you again for recognizing me. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think that was well said So two things are happening at the same time. We need to correct the charter for that omission, and maybe the details come into policy. But I think that correcting that omission for me over the last couple of years has been, and the finance committee has received throughout my term, and I know probably a little bit less than in Fran's term, quite a bit of and I don't know who said it right off of the bat, but we don't decide the deputy shellfish department's hours. We don't, and people have looked to us to define that, and that is not our job. Our primary charge, as I see it and have always seen it, is to advise town meeting. And with that being spelled out, we have cover, and I don't mean it in the sense that we don't want to be responsible, but we also want to stay in our lane, I believe, as the finance committee. So it gives us the opportunity to say, look, if you're talking to us, and I've had several meetings where people have brought up personnel issues, and you can't talk to us about personnel that isn't in our lane. So I think it's really, really important that that the rules of the road be guided in the charter, and maybe there is a place for bylaw, for policy and bylaws within the finance committee. And now I'm really gonna not say anything else, but I do appreciate Dan weighing in on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fran, this is directed to you, and to really anyone else on the finance committee, for me just to understand, it's kind of the order of operations. Where I'm moving down to 7.4 action on proposed budgets. That seems to be us correcting course on what was removed in 2013. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right. So select board creates a policy statement. TA prepares a draft budget. But can you help me understand 741? Upon receipt of the budget, the finance committee will schedule meetings at its discretion with the leadership of town departments to review their capital and operating budgets for the ensuing fiscal year. Is the suggestion that the finance committee sees the draft budget before the select board, and that you go over it with town departments, make modifications, and then present it to the select board? Is that what am I reading that correctly, or am I incorrect in that reading?
No, we view the select board's consideration of the draft budget and the finance committee budget to be concurrent, which is what has happened in practice. Okay. Once again, at least over the past several years. And that's been done through joint meetings with department heads. Last year, the year before, there were independent meetings that were held by the select board and the finance committee. So it's not necessarily this is not trying to be overly prescriptive. It's just that it is what the select board does in their consideration. But we wanted to once again memorialize the way that the finance committee approached considering the budget.
Sure. To your point of it being, historically, they've been joint meetings, but then the last few years they've been separate. Should we codify that the finance committee and the select board will hold joint meetings in 741? Is that
the
no?
742 does have a requirement for one joint public hearing. Now, public hearing is slightly different than a public meeting, so we may want to change that language there as well. But we don't want to specify, since different approaches have been taken in the past, we didn't want to require joint meetings, but we wanted to leave open the possibility of them by requiring at least one joint meeting.
Okay. Again, I apologize if I'm misunderstanding the proposal, but is there a scenario where the select board could be conducting its own drafting and revision of a budget in concurrence with the finance committee doing the same thing, but we'd be doing them independently? That doesn't seem efficient, but I don't think that's what's being proposed, but that's how I'm
no, it's the 743 is very clear that it's the select board's budget that gets presented at town meeting. So ultimately, that's what the finance committee has to issue its recommendations on. It's just that as a practical matter can, the discussions with the department heads can happen concurrently. And there's once again, there's no requirement that they do, but it's that is how it's been. The budget there were 5 versions of the budget, I think, that were presented to the select board last go around. I don't recall how many. I think there were only 2 the prior year, but like we didn't get the school numbers in the prior year. So one of the changes was dropping the real school numbers in there. So that's the way I envision the process working, is that the town administrator is involved in this process throughout. Even though we're saying it's a select board's budget, it's really the town administrator that gets the call from the superintendent of schools saying, "Hey, I just your enrollment is going to blow a hole in your budget." He's the one who's going to get that call, and he will be the one that's mechanically updating the budgets. But we would consider, and that's school is a bad example because we really don't have a whole lot of control over it. But if the town administrator puts in a proposal of or changes the number in February because of getting insurance quotes, that's maybe a more real one. That there's no reason why we have to wait for the select board to finish. Well, we don't think there's any reason we should wait for the select board to finish their consideration before before we step in. Frankly, there's just not enough time to enable that to happen, unless we start the process much earlier.
Hey, Jeff, and then Tom.
Yeah, I just want to comment briefly on the value that I see that the finance committee delivers. You have folks on the committee that are really good at asking questions. And when we have an opportunity as a committee and talking to the department heads as we're going through, and they have an opportunity to talk through the budget, that I have seen that process really work well, where suddenly they're able to either reconsider something, consider an alternative that they maybe hadn't thought of. We don't own it, but we are advisors, we are committed. So I just want to lay that out, how I see how our committee operates and what the value is that we deliver. Thank you.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, my only comment is the following on the budget. I think that the select board should have first stab at the budget before they turn it to the finance committee. It's their budget. I prepare a budget for the select board to make changes thereon if they see that there are changes that are necessary. And I would suggest that the town administrator shall submit to the select board a comprehensive budget and capital plan, blah, 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 by January 15th, not to change the date. The select board shall review and make changes thereon and transfer the budget to the finance committee 10 days later, 15 days later, pick a number. That doesn't kill the timing, but it does give the select board the opportunity to make changes on a budget before it's presented publicly and fully. I can submit a budget and it's their budget and they should have a chance to review it, make recommendations, and then turn it to the finance committee.
Kathy?
Yeah, just in response to that, Mr. Chairman, Tom, in the past, we received 2 budgets. Select board created their own budget, TA created their own budget, and then we went through discrepancies with that. Part of having the finance committee do the deep dive into that is because it's our purview. That's what our duty is.
Yeah.
And in the past, at one point, the select board wanted to meet with the department heads. I forgot how long ago, probably when I first got on and it was onerous for department heads to listen to say one thing. The select board may have a separate set of questions than the finance committee had, and it got to be very, very onerous to have the select board do a deep dive into the budgets. So the way that it has been historically was that we were presented two budgets. We went over the discrepancies with the TA. Basically the finance committee sat with the department heads and vetted them. And you've seen that process, Tom. That's not anything strange to you, where we might do, three nights in a row. However, the finance committee decides at that point, it might be 3 nights in a row. Sometimes it was 2 nights a week for 3 weeks. But it was quite an intense, and you laid the groundwork out for that. At that point, they were the finance committee meetings. Select board was absolutely invited to join in. And then after that gnashing was all through, we would have one joint statement for one joint public meeting to present it for public to have questions. But at that point, everything was pretty much baked. So just for historical reference.
Thanks. I'm just going to make an observation that just, from having listened to this so far, that it makes sense to me. On the select board, we have a variety of, and this goes for any select board, not just this one. You're likely to have a variety of areas of expertise. We have one person whose expertise is in land use and related law. We have someone else whose expertise is in communication. I cover the waterfront, to quote the name of a tune, and so forth. On the finance committee, it's a very focused group. And I sort of see it almost the way we have 2 houses of Congress. That separately come up with legislation to address a specific subject, and then they reconcile. And that's a process that makes sense to me, from the point of view of a budget being presented to both groups to separately work on and then meet jointly, and culminating in a public hearing, which I would think is de rigueur toward the end of the process, for the public to actually not only participate, but to weigh in before the final product is rolled out. So that's just, that's my thinking so far on this. Let's see, Tom, your hand is still up?
I just want to, on what Kathy was talking about, I suggested, and I think we tried it, but I think we should continue it, that the finance committee and select board meet in joint session to hear departmental advocacy for their departments. That way the questions are being asked once, everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time. And there's, taking another night out of the department heads, they can do that and they're willing to do that. But I think from a information consistency perspective, that's a really good way to go. And also have your full public hearing as well. But I think during the budget season, as much as possible, if the finance committee and select board, when they're looking at departmental budgets, can review jointly, that's fine. That does not preclude the select board or the finance committee from calling somebody into another of their individual meetings to get more information. But as a primer on what each department's doing, that seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm going to jump Sam ahead in line. We haven't heard from him
Right
yet.
ahead.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I just wanted to respond to Tom's comment there. When I was on the finance committee many years ago, we spent a lot of time in individual meetings with the department heads without the select board. and it was probably 20 or 30 minutes per department. And we would go through their budget in a level of depth that the select board frankly doesn't have the time to do. And so I think that those were really productive, and I felt that that was unfortunately missing from this last budget cycle. I was not on the committee for many years, and then I came back and for this last budget cycle. And as good as it was, I felt that we could have spent a lot more time as a finance committee going into those individual budgets, and I don't think that we'll get that same level of detail if we do it as a joint meeting. That's all I had.
Okay. I've not seen it that way, but that's fine, Sam. Thank you.
I don't personally see it as mutually exclusive. I think it's perfectly plausible for the members of the finance committee to do their work as liaisons and also have joint meetings. It was Sheila, did you have
Yes,
your hand up?
I do. And thank you for recognizing me, John. That's all good in a perfect world when a lot of people have time. I mean, I just know that to have the finance committee, you have to go through this whole thing. You're sort of repeating yourself to two different groups. So as good as that was, Sam, the finance committee and select board could cut it up into so many departments. We could have several meetings to make sure we review every department. And if there's real level of detail, we can do 3 and then 3 or something like that. However, I do think it is good that we all hear the same information. And I don't think that what is being proposed takes away the select board's, that it's the select board and the administration's budget. So Tom prepares a budget, it comes to us, we review it with Tom, make any changes, ask any questions as we see, and then it gets passed on. And at that point, we could have those joint meetings. Those are all the details that could be put into the bylaws or administrative guidance. I still think that to lay out the role of the finance committee in the charter is useful for everyone. And those other details of how we're going to get there. But I am very conscious. We have small staffs. We have limited money, and we don't want to overtax, have everybody in meetings when they're supposed to be doing their jobs, explaining their budgets. So I do think that having the joint meeting together, we all hear it. Anybody that wants to ask a question outside that came up to them, if the finance committee wants a specific answer to a specific question to a specific department, that can all be done. But we all know what is there before us. So we really do have to look at the reality. If we all had time and we all had all this, all of those things are great. But the staff, it's just a repetitive redundancy for them. And this is my experience on a county level, because they have to go through this with the assembly. And it's almost crazy. We've invited the assembly to review all of these departments together, and they don't want to. And it really is a drag of time. So I'm speaking from my own experience. I don't know how, but I do think that to try to be conscious of those things is important. Thank you, John.
Josh and then Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I agree with what everyone says, and I honestly don't have a strong opinion that the select board needs to see the budget first, per se, acknowledging that the finance committee does have an area of expertise in this. I was just asking what the order of operations was, because going back to 2010, it's pretty clear that the select board adopts the budget first, then presents it to the finance committee. As written in these proposed charter amendments, it skips that step. And if that's what the town wants, then that may be appropriate. However, it currently does change the process from where 7.3 used to be. If we as a group want to say, we should, the select board writes the policy memo, the TA puts it together, it then goes directly to FinCom to really, really needle down on it, really engage with department heads, and then it goes to the select board. Maybe that's the right order of operations. But right now, I think we're missing where the select board jumps in. And I just want to make sure that that is explicit in what's now called 7.4, the action on proposed budget.
Okay, Sam, did you have your hand up or did you put it down?
I forgot to take it down the first time, so you can move on to somebody else.
Okay, Kathy?
Sam, did your hand get tired being up there?
And good to see you again, Kathy.
I know, I'm not gonna promise, I'm not gonna talk. Josh, just back to your point, the way, historically, the way that's happened is that the select board didn't necessarily vet the budget. The TA and the select board had two pieces of paper. They didn't spend, there wasn't a lot of time spending vetting. It just usually went, here's our percentage increase over last year. And then they came up with numbers that fit into whatever was available at that time. That has gotten lost over the years, so that now the Finance Committee has only been presented with the TA budget, and I assume that that budget and the select board budget has been the same over the last few years. So that being said, at that point, from a process standpoint, is the Finance Committee gets into it, and that's when that's when the Finance Committee engages those department heads. I think this is what Sam was referring to, that we might have three department heads on one night, and it's a 2 to 2.5 hour meeting or 3 hour meeting where we go in with the department heads and the TA, and we say, why is that? What is this? How old's the ambulance? And then we go through every little question. At that point, the Finance Committee recommends, doesn't recommend, may tweak stuff. So we mix up that sausage. After that, and during those meetings, just for historical context, during those meetings, we invite the public. Sometimes we have to shut the public out, but we don't invite public comment at that point because it's our time. And if we invited public content, back to Sheila's point about time, each department, each line item with Tom. And at that point, after that point, we have a joint meeting. And during those meetings, select board is obviously, welcome to come, welcome to join. And then after that, we do one public meeting with select board and Finance Committee that is public. And that's the public opportunity to ask questions. But by that point, we vetted. We may have taken some things out, and people have commented to us. They say, why are you almost unanimous on these votes? And it's because before we get there, we say, no, that's not going to fly. So that's what the process has been. And Tom is involved in every step of that. It's not like the Finance Committee's just running wild with department heads. So I just figured I'd lay it out so everybody was kind of on the same page on process.
Ryan, you had your hand up for.
No, not for a while. I just put it up. That amount of oversight has happened a number of times since I've been on the board. The select board spending oftentimes a month and a half, if not more, going through the budget. Particularly if things are tight. But that level of, it would take us multiple meetings to get through the budget, usually sometimes between 4 to 6. So that same level of attention has been given to prior budgets. So yeah. But a lot of it changes based off of the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Josh.
If someone could just, please, I'm the junior member, right? I'm new here. But if someone could just help me understand, just based on this language, at what point is the select board giving comment on this draft budget? That just seems to be omitted from these amendments, and that's what I'm trying to understand.
Fran?
Yeah, Josh, I had to direct your attention to 743. There's no time limit here, but it vests And we think this is required, this language is required under section 16 to give the select board the authority to propose the budget to town meeting. But it is the select board's budget that is proposed, that is presented to town meeting. And the finance committee's role is to make a recommendation on whether to accept the budget or not. And the entire process before that is just is to allow both the select board and the finance committee to fulfill their specific roles.
Right. So I understand 743 is to present it to town meeting. What I'm trying to understand is when is the select board's role to make comments and amendments to the town administrator when they first propose the draft budget?
Through the chair,
Yeah.
Yes.
that is the rationale, Josh, for my recommendation that there be a separation from when the select board gets the budget to when the finance committee gets the budget. That gives the select board time to chime in on areas that are of concern to them, make changes, direct the town administrator, and bring together a mostly concurred financial package to the finance committee. The notion that Kathy had brought it up, the notion that the town administrator would submit a budget separate and distinct from the select board makes zero sense to me as a town administrator. We have to go in, even if there are some things I don't like in the budget that you've told me that you want to do, that's my job. So while I'm here, there will never be two budgets submitted to the town
Yeah.
meeting or to the finance committee or anybody else. It's the select board's budget that's put together by the TA for their review.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to re-amplify what Tom just said. This is not the finance committee's budget. We don't have a budget. Our constituency is not the select board or the department heads or the TA. Our constituency are the taxpayers at town meeting. And all we're doing is representing those and commenting ahead of town meeting and working with the TA and the select board to try to make the budget as good as it possibly can be.
It's always been my understanding. Sheila and then
Yeah.
John.
Thank you. Yeah, Josh, in a sense, we did sort of review that. Tom gave us this budget. We went over what the budget contained. We asked questions. We understood the rationale behind all of these things. And that's what went forward to the finance committee. And the finance committee is, for all of its work, and it is an advisory committee. We can take it or leave it. And they really don't have power over it. They have recommendations and their opinion. And they have the chance to voice that in meetings with us and in public. And during town meeting, they can explain why they agreed with something or why they did not. But that does not make it not on a warrant. If we believe that this has to be put forward, whether the finance committee agrees with it or not, that's their opinion. It doesn't mean that it's taken off the warrant or whatever. So they are an advisory committee, and that is a good role. We need that advice. And but it is our budget, and it's our budget the minute Tom gives it to us and we start talking about it. And that's what gets forward. Whatever we agree to and or have questions about, that's what gets forward to the finance. So that is sort of our role. And that's sort of explained here, that Tom makes the budget, gives it to us, we review it and say, yep, and it goes off to you guys. And then we all get together in some fashion that we all agree upon and, hammer out the fine details. And if all goes well, we come out all holding hands at the end of that process as we go into town meeting.
So this is Ms. Lyons, that's the question that I have. You said, and then it comes to us and then it goes to finance committee. I'm just not seeing it in the language where it says it goes to the select board. Then the
It's right
finance.
there in the beginning.
Can you show me?
I'm gonna look.
We prepare a policy statement, but then the draft budget and the draft budget message.
Right.
But where's the actual draft budget in the select board's hands? That's just it's just a clarifying question. And I think we could possibly just we can just add back in the former charter, which at 731 in its entirety as the first bullet point is 7-4, and it solves the problem. And we can amend the timeline. It could be 7 days, it could be 10 days. I mean, I fully agree with everything that everyone has said around the role of the finance committee and its importance. I'm just trying to understand in the order of operations when this actually becomes the select board's budget for then the finance committee to review. It doesn't seem to be explicitly articulated here.
Okay, so in 7.2 in the charter as it's written now, select board shall prepare a budget and issue a policy statement relating to the budget of the ensuing year. That statement shall recommend the outer limits of the possible budget growth for the municipality departments. So Tom it's really Tom pulls this together for us and we talk about it.
No, we've typically written our own budget statement and policies.
I don't remember doing. Yeah, I guess so.
And that is something that was never distributed, at least to the finance committee last year, if it was done.
Yeah, it was done.
No, I'm done.
Barbara, I'd like to hear from you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So this was a few speakers back, but I did want to say I agree wholeheartedly with Jeff's description of the role of the finance committee as representing the taxpayers. And again, what I'm going to call the extra set of eyes. And just to repeat what I said earlier, I think the main task for us is just to make sure we have language that accommodates, respects the role of the town administrator. But I also just wanted to kind of check in because it's been an hour and a half, and I just wonder if we had any goals for tonight, whether to agree on some language or agree on a path forward, or so could I ask maybe that both chairs speak to that, just so we have some direction for whatever time we want to continue discussing. Is that okay?
I was working up to asking how close we are to crafting a motion.
I don't think we're there, is what I'm hearing, but so at least when it comes to the schedule, about when things are due, that's usually incorporated into the select board's statement, budget message, and I forget when we set our schedule for the year, but we typically include when different financial matters are expected to be due. I'd have to look at the charter to see if it's in there, but that's how we've typically been handling when things were due by. So, yeah.
Okay, Barbara, did you still have your hand up?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Okay, Sheila?
I agree with Barbara. I think that if we're going to take any action tonight, we might want to just say that we agree to insert the role of the finance committee back into the charter. These details of how that rolls out. I mean, this is the role of it is once they sort of get that charter, get the budget. And So I don't have a problem if we want to say we want to insert the role of the budget of the finance committee. These details, as you know, laying out the process, can be done another time, or we can agree that this is going to be sort of guidance and a bylaw. And we can agree that we'll have the finance committee bylaws, and all of these, the process can be spelled out there. But the role is important for people to understand what it is they do. And if we're trying to wrap up this meeting for tonight, I have no problem in agreeing to insert the role of the committee into the charter, and for the rest of these details to be discussed at a next meeting or whenever is convenient for everyone. If that makes sense to everybody.
It doesn't.
Well, I expected that.
So like if you can't just insert something in a charter, like it doesn't work that way. So we would have to have a draft article, which is what's been prepared here for town meeting, and basically what that draft article consists of. And that's the first step. But until we're ready to vote on the article, yeah, it doesn't make sense to take it piecemeal.
Yeah, we have to consider the specifics of what is actually going to go into this article. Because once it's there, it's there. It's not policy that we can change down the road. It's willy-nilly. As it was pointed out earlier, it takes time to make these charter changes, and they're usually pretty significant changes. And so we need to decide what we want, if anything, to be changed in the charter. And it sounds to me like there does need to be a change, a clarification of the role of the finance committee and the process by which they participate in the budget process. Kathy?
Can I make a suggestion that may forward a solution? Can I voluntold people? If Fran voluntold, you've never heard that. Would it be workable to say, let's have either Fran or the charter committee from the finance committee work with volunteers from the select board to try to hammer this out a little bit better, and then bring it back to another meeting? Would that be a solution? Because we're going around and around, and I think it would be, since both parties have an interest to this, and Fran and Jeff have done so much work on this, and we're bringing it to you for new eyes, and Josh has very, very new eyes. I might suggest that we put a working group of somebody from each board to kind of hammer out what the details of what needs to be fixed going forward, and maybe come back in a month or a couple of weeks. When do we have this ready, Tom? Is there a time frame for town meeting?
Yeah, we're getting on the 30-day mark here. The select board's got to approve the warrant Tuesday night.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's not, this special town meeting, I mean, our annual town meeting is only 6 months after.
Right.
So that might be something to just kind of,
We could put it on for that.
and I'm not raising my hand
Oh, and I'm going to lower mine.
for that. Fan. And Tom, I didn't mean I want to apologize. I didn't mean that you had to do two budgets. Usually the two budgets came up when the select board didn't agree with the TA, and that was a way to note it.
Can't imagine that'll ever happen.
Thank you. All right, so that's my suggestion for a solution.
So, if I
Fran?
may, okay.
The danger of delay is without the specific authorization in the charter or bylaws for the select board to be responsible for the budget. That means it falls on the finance committee.
No, the select board's the executive of the town,
Right.
so it doesn't follow finance committees.
Mr. Curley, please pull up chapter 39, section 16.
Please, let's not have the back and forth.
I apologize, Mr. Chair.
No, not, that goes across for everybody.
No, I was the defending party. I apologize.
No, you were recognized.
In every town have, oh, I'm sorry.
You were recognized. So, all right, so moving on from that.
Tom.
Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just reading it. Every town whose valuation for the purpose of apportioning the state tax record, state tax exceeds $1 million shall, and in any other town by bylaw, provide for the election or appointment and duties of appropriation advisory or finance committees who shall consider any or all municipal questions before the purpose of making reports or recommendations to the town, such as bylaws and so forth. In every town having a committee appointed under authority of this section, such committee or the selectmen, if authorized by a bylaw of the town, and in any town not having such a committee, the selectmen shall submit a budget to the annual town meeting.
So if I can eliminate it, or if I can summarize that, the section provides the default is the finance committee presents the budget. The select board only has that authority, it only has that role if authorized by a bylaw.
Right.
So absent a language in the charter or a bylaw, which I was not able to find, and I'm not an attorney, so I could be completely wrong in this, but my reading, if section 7-73 was in fact repealed at the 2013 town meeting, then the default applies and it's the finance committee that's responsible for the budget. I don't think that's what the town wants. I don't think that's what it expects. I don't think it's what it wants.
In other words, you believe the town wants the select board to submit the budget.
It's not theirs, but
That has been the traditional role of the finance committee, has been advisory only, is to make recommendations. And the select board, being the elected representatives of the town, are the ones that that have been authorized, that we believe should be authorized to present the budget.
Yeah, well, if we haven't been able to find that, wouldn't this be the right opportunity to correct that by making this change in the charter?
I think you certainly want to put, if at a minimum, you want to put that in this town meeting. Because remember, it'll take 2 town elections before this, whatever changes we approve this evening, become effective.
Right. Would it make sense then to craft a motion to stipulate that the select board shall be shall submit the budget, and that the finance committee shall serve in it, specifically in an advisory committee to that process, or something to that effect? I'm just trying to see if I can streamline this so we can get something done tonight. Barbara?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would that be just a motion that expresses the intent of this board and of the finance committee, but not voting on language to include in an article? Is that what you mean?
No, I mean
inserting, do you mean taking a part of what's been proposed and agreeing to put that on the warrant?
Yeah, if I understand Mr. Conroy correctly, at a minimum, that's what we should be getting done tonight.
So through the chair, I hesitate to do things piecemeal in terms of amending the charter. I think if the problem is that there's some ambiguity about the role of the boards, I I would suggest as a potential alternative, you know, that we, by motion or otherwise, just effectuate that. But you know, right now I just feel a bit unmoored, you know, in terms of voting on specific language without really considering the whole piece. Again, I support these changes with some tweaking, but I just don't think piecemeal is the best way to go about it. And I think Ryan said something about that earlier. Thank you.
I'm not sure if it's piecemeal or if this is an overall, I don't know what the word I'm trying to find here is, definition of the respective roles of the select board and the finance committee in the budget process, with the other details worked out as policy decisions that don't have to be charter changes. I'm not sure if I'm articulating that very well. I see a bunch of hands up, Sam and then Jeff.
I think that it's been a decade as is. It's not correct, but no, it hasn't been catastrophic. I think that we should take the time to do this correctly. And if it doesn't make it for this special town meeting, then we'll make it for the annual, and we'll have something good. The reason why the charter changes were voted down in the 2013 or whatever it was town meeting was because the townspeople didn't like what the finance committee had proposed. If they don't like it again, then it's going to get voted down and we're going to be right back in the same place.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious if there's anything, if we go back at this point and relook at what is being proposed, is there things objectionable in the language? You know, I'm just trying to, we started this, we didn't submit it in the spring meeting because those were finance matters and this was supposed to be for things like charter changes. So that's why we already delayed. And sort of the history, when Fred was chair, he found it really frustrating that the blueprint for how he should lead was very confusing. And that's what led us to form a little subcommittee. And so I'm wondering if we could just revisit the actual text and see if we can maybe hammer something out of that.
I'd be up for, I'd be for that. Let's see, Sheila.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate Sam's perspective on this, and it may be better. I mean, we have lived this long without it being codified, but you know, section 7.2, submission of the budget and budget message, sort of goes over the select board in preparing this policy statement relating to the ensuing and shall recommend to the outer limits as possible budget growth in all municipal departments. The policy shall be sent to officials responsible for preparing budgets. So that's you know, Tom, you know, meeting with the departments and saying, well, it's time to get your budgets together, and this is how much we have, and this is what you have to do, or you have to cut, or whatever. And then on the 31st, so there is, the select board and the finance shall set a date by which the town administrator shall submit to them a comprehensive budget, etc. So there is something, you know, there about the selectman's role. I do understand that it's, I like the fact that it was section 7.3 that was dropped and never picked up again. And that's what this role of the finance committee in red that is being proposed to us under section 7.2, role of the committee, but it really should be section 7.3 again. And so, you know, if that's what we're going to have confusion on, we don't want to go in confused to town meeting because people will pick up on it. As Sam suggested, we could put it off till May, really work on this, make sure it's clear, concise, not just for us, but for future generations and members. And so I would I would move to move all of this to be worked on further for May meeting. How's that for a proposed? There's a motion for you, John. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that provision of Mass General Law doesn't specify it has to be a charter. In the charter, it just says bylaw. So we could potentially do it in the bylaws, which is a little bit more flexible than doing a charter change. That might be a better way to move this forward, rather than doing a charter change itself. There are certain elements of it that definitely, we might want to spell out into the charter, but there's, other elements that we can encompass, into a bylaw that then is a little bit more flexible going forward.
And it satisfies the finance committee's need. If I could add that.
That Mass General Law seems to specify that it can be a bylaw, it would appear that it would satisfy it, at least that's my read on it. Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suppose I should have asked this question at the beginning of the meeting, but is there a reason why we don't just add in the old section 7-3 and call it a day? I mean, if that was the original sin, do we just not correct it and move forward? And then we work together on either policies or bylaws that have a more specific process. But in terms of actual charter, would that?
Fran, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it is, given the diversity of opinions, I think it probably, putting it off probably makes sense. Which is not a great, solution, but it's, this is important. We got to get it right.
Right.
So I think that's, and to Josh's point, once again, given the language of the minutes of the town meeting, I am not certain that section 7.7-3 doesn't still exist. And if that were the case, that sort of addresses, Josh, your suggestion that, it's put this back in. And now what this will require then is the select board acting within 30 days after getting the budget, which is a very, very tight schedule.
Mhm.
But it at least is and it does require the finance committee to hold public meetings about the budget and to issue recommendations, which is something we can do. But it also requires joint meetings with the department heads. I think all of those are perfectly reasonable and we can live with it. But that, once again, that assumes that 7-3 is still the active charter. The pre-2010 the pre-2010 ATM section 7.3, if that's still right, if it's still in part of the charter, then that solves the short-term issue.
Right.
Are you referring to Appendix A or Appendix B?
Appendix A is what was the existing. Appendix B are the proposed changes. The minutes say the changes were rejected. It doesn't say 7.3 as a whole was rejected.
Copy that.
Oh, so there you go.
So if that said another way, 7.3 prior to amendments should still be controlling.
Right, and that is here.
Now, I am saying that based only on the language in the minutes of the town meeting. And you shouldn't take my word, solely my word for that.
Don't worry.
Is my point.
Then we need to take a sharp look at the charter then.
Mr.
Yeah, I
Chair,
mean,
I have an
Go-
idea.
but heading in that,
Copy it
if,
right
if,
here.
if it is the sense of the boards to move in that direction, I think that's a solution.
We were given a copy of Chapter C of the Charter, Chapter 7, Financial Provisions and Procedures, current charter, under Section 7-2, Submission of Budget and Budget Message, which does sort of lay out all of the process that the select board shall prepare it. It goes over to the finance committee and how we work together on that. And then the proposed change of 7.3, it says repealed 4/30/13. So what was there does exist. And if that will hold us until we can look at that, and are there changes to that section we want to make? And we can make very good ones that hopefully will pass muster of town meeting and be agreeable to everyone. But it is there in the charter as it was given to us to help us guide us in this meeting tonight. And thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, Josh?
Right, but member lines, what Mr. Conroy is suggesting that 7-3, which has 3 subsections, may have erroneously been removed from the charter, but it actually was not removed. That's the suggestion. Is it worth asking town council to review town meeting and election minutes to confirm this? I mean, if the suggestion is that we're missing part of our charter that actually isn't missing, we should probably get to the bottom of that.
Tom?
Or we can just add it back in.
Right, but we have to create the article, which isn't a big deal. It's got to go to council for review. It's got to come back from council for review, then get inserted to the warrant. I can't do that between tonight and tomorrow night.
Right.
As an alternative suggestion, I mean, we could, alternative suggestion, it's a little less formal. What if we all agreed to a select board, finance committee MOU that outlines the budget process for FY27 that we sign in blood and we live with for this year, and we move toward the charter and or bylaw changes that we need to make in May.
I'm for that. I will go with that.
So through the chair, bylaw or charter?
Well, there was discussion that there were some pieces that would be better off in a bylaw. Mr. Curley had brought up a little while ago,
Okay.
and some that belonged in the charter. I don't have a dog in that race. I'm just,
Okay, so through the chair, I mean, I agree with Tom's suggestion. I would just say work together on alterations or to amendments to charter and or bylaws for now, and we'll hash it out later. I don't want, I think most of this should be in charter, but let's hash that out later.
I just want to know how Tom got credit for that suggestion, just saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Here you are again.
Sorry, fair enough. Shame on me, shame on me. I was just responding to the most recent speaker, but yes, this is Kathy's idea, and let's do that.
I just formalized it, Kathy. That's all.
I love the flowery language, Tom. I'm not quite as articulate. I'm sorry, after 2 hours, I get a little punchy.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I brought
this.
this up, because we're all getting a little squirrely. That's all.
So,
Grant's got his hand up.
It sounds like it is the sense of the combined boards to kick the can down a road. Can I suggest that we form a committee to look into this with one member of the finance committee, one member of the select board, and to report back? And I would add, or I would prefer to see that we do look at whether 7.3 is the law of the land, or whether that has in fact been repealed as part of that process.
We can do that, Fran.
and if I could just add that if available, have Tom available for that meeting as well.
That'd be great.
Town administration should definitely
Yes.
be.
Yeah.
Can we entertain a motion on both our boards toward this, or is that necessary?
I don't think we want to officially form a committee, like
Okay.
official, because then it becomes a public body in and of itself. So, we can, sometimes we've handled it by having the town administrator, form a working group or something along those lines,
I think that sounds
That
Um,
works.
rather
works.
than having us, create a new public body.
Well,
I
excellent.
agree.
Thank you.
Occasionally I can be helpful.
Yeah.
So how would we do this? We're just going to say that we would like to have Tom create a working committee to hash out
Working group.
discrepancies and clarity of the role of the finance committee and process to be presented in the May town meeting.
It's a little bit more than just the finance committee's role and process. It's also about the annual budget process.
Okay, so we'll say the annual budget process, including the finance committee role, and including the select board's role.
Maybe
So
maybe you can
it's
just say revising section 7 of the charter.
that's even better. That sounds good. And we'll have so make that motion, Fran, with a working committee to review section 7.
Working
Sorry.
group, don't call it a committee.
Working
Can't call it a
group.
committee. Yep.
Working group to review section 7. You could even just put, chapter 7 of the
Yes.
financial provisions and procedures. That encompasses a lot.
Yeah, that doesn't limit it to a subsection.
Right. So that's the motion.
Right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Hey, for the select board then, I'll take a roll call vote.
Ryan,
Barbara, I.
Sheila, I.
Josh, aye.
John, aye, passes 5-0.
Can I ask a finance committee member to make the same motion, please?
Oh, you're
Kathy, I
muted,
think I see
Kathy.
your lips moving, but you're
Go on, Kathy.
muted.
I'll make a motion to, for Sheila's motion as written.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
We're not as formal with roll call votes, but all in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, looks like we lost Stephen, so it passes 5-0, 4-0 on our side.
Okay.
No, we got Jen here too. Fran.
And I just want to point out that since we are sticking with the current charter, the finance committee expects a capital improvement plan in 16 days' time.
May be able to get it to you in
And they
16
have the
days'
authority to
time.
approve it.
We're actually meeting on that Monday.
I knew you'd be on top of this. Tom.
Here's the answer to that question. There is no money this year.
That's right. Won't be much to do.
no, that's when money is tight is when it's the hardest, actually.
All right, John, thanks for your indulgence.
Sure.
All right.
Does this negate the need to consider business item B? I guess
what-
to review and discuss with possible votes for the fall town meeting warrant.
Yeah, it's too late.
All right.
Actually, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
well, actually, you can do that tomorrow night. You can have a formal motion to take that off the warrant.
Do we
Oh,
place it?
We never voted to insert it, did we?
Well, that's true too. We'll just pull it. You're right, Josh. Thank you.
Okay.
While we're all here, and because it's on the agenda, and I think I'm going to voluntold myself to do this, but there is an article in the proposed warrant for the town of Orleans that espouses the beauty of its waters. Is the intention that someone's going to write this to be a Wellfleet language?
It was sent in by a person. It wasn't a petition article, so the select board can change it at will. But I can't change it at will.
So we can discuss that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that was just a head scratcher, so thank you for indulging me on that one.
Okay.
I guess we can entertain motions to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Do I hear anyone in opposition? So moved. The Finance Committee meeting adjourned I'm calling it adjourned as of 9:02 p.m.
Select board roll call vote.
Ryan, I.
Sheila, aye.
Josh, aye.
John, aye. We are now officially adjourned at 9:02 p.m.
Okay.
Good night, folks.
Yahoo!
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good night,
Thank you, everyone.
everyone.